The following program is paid for by Absolute Mortgage, a division of Pinnacle Capital Mortgage Corporation. Absolute Mortgage Company, NMLS number 81395 and Washington CL number 81395 is an equal opportunity housing lender. Tina Mitchell, MLO number 145420, is a licensed loan originator with Absolute Mortgage. Visit absoluteloans.com or call 888-90-HOMES for cost information.
You're listening to The Money Hour with your host, Tina Mitchell, sponsored by Absolute Mortgage, a division of Pinnacle Capital Mortgage Corporation. Now, in the studio, local mortgage and finance expert, Tina Mitchell.
Welcome to The Money Hour on 570 KVI, the Sunday, October 27 show. I'm your host and mortgage expert, Tina Mitchell. Thank you for taking time to talk money. I'm here every Sunday at 11 a.m. right here on 570 KVI. I'm empowering our community and providing you with opportunities and solutions when it comes to your money. And my lineup of guests today, Lloyd Hara, our King County Assessor. Lloyd comes into studio to share the most recent things happening with your property taxes and over at the assessor's office. Also in studio, I have John O'Brien with John L. Scott Real Estate. In this economy, everyone's trying to save money. And if you're thinking of selling your home, this is not the place to try to cut costs. You may be considering selling your home for sale by owner and not hiring a real estate agent to represent you. This could be an expensive mistake, and we're going to talk about that today. And last in studio, definitely not least, one of our regular contributors of the show, Aimee Carpenter with SolTerra Systems. And she's here, as always, to share solar energy use and the importance of that and all the financial incentives and benefits you'll see by utilizing solar. Great information and great guest in studio today. For more information on any of the topics that we discuss, please pick up the phone, give the show a call at 1-888-987-0570. Again, if you want to talk to any of my guests in studio today, 1-888-987-0570 or online at themoneyhour.com. And we'll start out the show with a little bit of money chat. How about just a little bit of news and what's happening in our real estate market? Competition to buy homes declined last month in most areas, but not in Seattle. Seattle posted the biggest increase out of the 22 U.S. markets in the share of listing attracting multiple offers, from 49.2% in August to 57% in September. Seattle-based online real estate firm Redfin reported this, that Seattle is still behind San Francisco, Orange County, Los Angeles, and Boston for the overall percentage of listings with competition. Now, across all 22 markets, the share of homes with multiple offers was just over 58% in September, down from 60.5% in August and 62.7% year earlier. Competition peaked at 76% of all listings in March. Marshall Park, Redfin's marketing manager, quoted, "The bargaining power for sellers that happened earlier this year is gone." Now, homes sold for an average of 0.4% below asking price, but 1.4% above asking price for Seattle. So again, just a little bit of focus on our great real estate market here in Seattle. San Francisco was the only other market where sales prices topped asking prices. The report also showed of varying ways that people are making offers more appealing to the seller and ultimately getting their offers accepted. Waiving finance contingency, for instance, is relatively popular in San Francisco. The report says it wasn't popular in Seattle. Now, in my own personal business, I have to say, doing mortgages, I see these contingencies come across my desk all the time. And I thought that actually Seattle did a lot of finance contingency, but in the report, not as much as other areas. What they were seeing that in the Seattle market that were some really popular contingencies, which I see these as well, is the seller, the potential buyer, writing a personal letter to the seller. Always helpful. And I just like to compare it to a job interview, when you're putting together a resume, you always want to have that cover letter. So the letter to the seller is kind of like the cover letter from the buyer and why they want the house that bad. And then also one of our, in Seattle being one of the top areas in waiving the inspection contingency or doing pre-inspection. So not to encourage to waive your inspection. But in this market, depending on the house you're making an offer on, if there's multiple offers, there's a really good chance that your offer is not going to be considered if you go in with an inspection contingency, which just basically means that you want to do that inspection up front so you know the house is okay, and that would just be a cost that you could potentially be out of. Now, I also really quickly wanted to give a reminder on the Consumer Protection Acts. There's some major changes coming up in effect on November 16th. Congress established the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, or known as CFPB, through the Dodd-Frank Wall Street reform, and it was a direct response to the 2008 financial crisis. Under CFPB, the Consumer Protection Act was established, and it changes how the banks are lending, and there's some recent and updated changes that are coming in, again, which the trigger date is November 16th, so you have to have had an application completed and a desktop underwriting review ran. So basically what a desktop, or the industry calls DU, it's an automated system ran through the computer that's communicating directly with Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac in the secondary market. So these findings have to be ran and approved prior to this date. If not, here's some changes that could be affected. So you also need to close within a particular period of time, which is going to be soon after that November date. You really need to check with your lender. So I want to caution those of you that are pre-approved right now. Understand the pre-approval is only as good as loan programs that are available at the time that you actually close. So you're out there shopping for a home in this competitive market. You may not be getting your offer accepted on the first home that you're looking at. So if you're pre-approved, here's a big one out there that I think a lot of people are going to be affected by if they don't move quickly. If you're going with a conventional 3% down payment loan, that is not going to be available. Minimum down payment for conventional financing is going to be a 3% down. There are other loan programs like FHA that allows a 3.5%, so it's a little bit better than 5%. But I promise you, if you look at those numbers in comparison to the conventional 3% that you are currently possibly looking at now, you're not going to like the payment because of the mortgage insurance. So a big caution there. That financing is not going to be available. So you need to move very, very quickly here. Also, the interest-only loans, those are going to be eliminated. The longer amortizations, going over a 30-year amortization into your 40, 50-year amortizations, those are going to be eliminated. Adjustable rate mortgages are now going to require qualification at 2% over the start rate. So whatever your start rate of that adjustable rate mortgage is, 2% over that is the qualifying factor. 45% maximum debt to income ratio, and loan modification. And who would know at the time when you're going through loan modification, all lenders were letting you know it's not affecting your credit. Well, that's not the case anymore. Loan modification is going to be 4 years out of a modification before you can purchase a new home on conventional financing. This is all around Fannie Mae changes. Now, what the rule is requiring is for lenders to make a reasonable, good faith determination of the consumer's ability to repay before originating a mortgage. So banks are going to make sure that they're going through the due diligence of following the regulations that are set up to ensure that that potential buyer can actually repay that mortgage. Because if they haven't gone through those steps, then they're going to be setting themselves up for future lawsuits, which they're not going to do. So that's the whole change here, again, around Consumer Financial Protection Bureau and protecting you as a consumer to ensure you're not getting into a mortgage that you actually can't handle. Now, there are 8 on the act. There's a list of 8 underwriting factors that they're going to consider: current and reasonable unexpected income or asset, current employment status. So there's going to be a little more gray, or a little more, not as much gray area as far as the employment status and compensating factors around that. Monthly payment on converted transactions, the monthly payment on any simultaneous loans. So there's going to be a lot of changes with purchase money second mortgages, the mortgage payment, monthly mortgage payment obligation. So anything related to the monthly mortgage payment, any other debt, obviously current debts with child support, alimony, and on credit cards. And again, the debt to income ratio, and that's where that 45% maximum is hitting. And there's going to be some changes as well for credit. So just something to be to consider. If you've heard anything on today's show that you'd like more information on, pick up the phone, give my show a call, 1-888-987-0570. Again, that's 1-888-987-0570, or online at themoneyhour.com. Coming up next on The Money Hour, each year their staff of real estate appraisers value more than 660,000 residential and commercial properties throughout King County. The evaluations are then used to calculate the owner's property taxes for the following year. We have Lloyd Hara, King County Assessor, in studio coming up next, right after this short break, 570 KVI.
If you own a property in King County, do you know how your home is assessed? Don't appeal the value of your home without understanding how an assessment really works. Get the information you need at kingcounty.gov. Learn how your particular neighborhood is trending. Find detailed reports on your property and search for comparable sales at kingcounty.gov. Lloyd Hara, elected assessor for King County, is honored to serve the people of this great county. As your county assessor, he pledges to treat all taxpayers fairly and with the respect you deserve. Get all the information you need about your property taxes at kingcounty.gov.
Isn't it time you start getting what you want? I'm Jason Watacha, owner of Noble Ridge Construction, specialist in custom home building and remodeling. It's time to make yourself happy and create the home that fits your desires and style. That process starts by visiting us at nobleridgeconstruction.com or follow us on Facebook to get inspired. You can also see featured custom lots available, architects, and Signature Series homes for sale by us. nobleridgeconstruction.com. That's nobleridgeconstruction.com. Dreams begin here.
Here's amazing news from SolTerra Systems. Install solar in your home right now and save 50 to 90%. That's right. Incentives cover 50 to 90% of your cost. Here's Aimee Carpenter.
Go Solar and Washington State will pay you for all the energy you create, even if you use it in your own home. Get on the fast track to free energy with zero down financing. These incentives end soon, so call us today.
Call SolTerra Systems for a free site assessment. 800-865-9005 or useyourroof.com. That's useyourroof.com.
This is The Money Hour with your host, Tina Mitchell, on Talk Radio 570 KBI. Now, back to the show with local mortgage and finance expert, Tina Mitchell.
Welcome back to The Money Hour with your host and mortgage expert, Tina Mitchell. My goal is to keep you up to date on the latest news and trends in our local economy. Keep me tuned in, and I promise I will keep you informed. And our first guest in studio, regular contributor of the show, Lloyd Hara, our King County Assessor. Lloyd's in studio to share recent things that's happening at the assessor's office and everything regarding property taxes. Just a quick introduction of Lloyd. Respected veteran public official. He was elected assessor November 3rd, 2009, and has a record as a tireless advocate for taxpayers and champion openness and transparency for government agencies. Lloyd, thank you again. I know you've got a busy day over there at the assessor office all the time. Well, maybe not on the weekends, but thanks for spending some time with us in studio.
Well, it's great to be here.
So why don't we just start out, because right now coming up on October 31st, if I remember correctly, second half property taxes are due. Is that correct?
That is absolutely correct. And you mail your property tax to the King County Treasurer's Office. So that is due, and you want to make sure you get them in on time to avoid penalty and interest.
So if you have a mortgage, a lot of you have an escrow account if you're holding a mortgage where the bank is taking care of taxes and insurance for you. So those are probably already been taken care of, but you definitely will receive a bill in the mail. You want to keep that with your records because property taxes are a tax write-off. So Lloyd, let's talk about penalties. What happens if they miss their payment, if they are paying their own taxes and they miss their payment? What does that mean?
Well, it means that for every 30 days, it's 1%.
Okay.
And then a penalty will kick in at if they're not picked up at initially at 3%, and then if you're still 6 months or greater in arrears, and it kicks up to 8%. So
wow.
A total 11%.
So they want to make sure they get this money and get their taxes paid.
Absolutely, you want to do that.
And also, it's not good news if you're not paying your property taxes, because then you can get a lien put on your property. But that's a whole nother show. Lloyd, can we discuss what's on the tax bill and where this money's coming from?
Absolutely. On your tax bill, it will give you kind of a breakout as to where your property tax will go. As many of the audience knows, is that it's broken into various segments. And for King County, approximately 50% or more goes to support the common schools of the K through 12 program. Another 17.5% goes normally to the cities, 16.5% to King County government, 2% to the port, and the remaining depending upon if you have special districts in your community. So that's, in essence, the property tax portion.
Okay.
You also have a element called fees that are also included, which include service management fees or noxious weed or the conservation district, which is also added to the property tax statement, but it is not taxes, they are fees.
Okay, so those are all the fees.
That's correct.
Okay, and so what about the appeal process, Lloyd? If someone does want to appeal the value on their property, what are your tips there?
Well, first and foremost, you will get a postcard from us. Every property owner will, and you have 60 days from the date of that postcard to appeal. And you appeal to what we call the Board of Equalization, which is a 7-member citizen board. And we've made it even easier now for taxpayers because you can go online. And it goes. You can go through a sequencing of making your appeal. You bring up your personal property, and then you can take a look at comps, and you can check that. You can also go through a section which we call a tax calculator. So if you think that, say you live in the city of Seattle and you think your property is overvalued, say by $10,000, what would that save you? That would basically save you approximately $100 in tax, because it's at $10.50.
So you're going to really run the numbers and make sure it makes sense
so
to go through the appeal
so
process.
whether or not you want to do that. And for some people say, no, I don't think I want to. My time is worth more than that.
Of course.
By the time you pay downtown parking and everything else, waiting for your hearing, you really need to take another whole look as to whether or not it makes sense for you personally to do that. And in some cases,
if you do want to, you can go to kingcounty.gov, the website, and get all of the information and tools that we're talking about today and we have in previous shows. So let's talk about the 2014 inspections are coming up. So if you're listening right now and you do see a strange person outside your house and it looks like they're doing some stuff out there, it might be a representative from the King County Department of Assessments. And actually, sometimes they knock on doors to do inspections. You have the opportunity to let them in your house or not. But so, Lloyd, what about some neighborhoods? What's going on with these inspections that are coming up?
For this year, 2014, we have neighborhoods like Snoqualmie and North Bend, Snoqualmie Ridge, Beaux Arts over in the Bellevue area. We also have East Kenmore, Bothell, Broadview, Blue Ridge. We also have neighborhoods in Mercer Island. So, we try to get out at least once every 6 years to physically inspect all homes in various areas. We're also over in Panther Lake and Benson Hill. We also are down in Pacific and Algona, down in the central area of Seattle. And we also have a team out in South Rainier Valley and the South Beacon Hill area. So those are primarily the areas this year that we're physically inspecting. So what you want to do, all of our appraisers that are in the field carry identification. And if you do have a question, ask them to produce that.
Okay. So if you see that strange person outside your house in your yard, ask for their identification, and you can see they're with the assessor's office. So be nice to them. They get a chance every 6 years to come out. So give them information they may need. And Lloyd, let's talk a little bit about senior exemptions, because I think this is and I don't know, you'd know better than I do, but this is an area that a lot of people miss out on and aren't taking full advantage or taking advantage of these opportunities. So can you talk about this?
That's correct. We try to get out to all senior centers to explain the program, but there are many that are shut-ins and may not. And you have to be 62 years of age, live primarily in the property, and have a gross income of $35,000 or less.
Okay. And if they miss this, what are their options?
Well,
because you can go back, right?
Yes, you can. We can go back 3 years.
Okay.
And so you can get 3 years of back credit if you are qualified.
And you want to be cautious, too, as buyers, and I see this on the lending side, but sometimes lenders and even on the real estate side, for whatever reason, they don't pick it up on the listing. It's right there on your listing when you're looking at new homes. If the property taxes seem really low, especially if you're looking at the home next door and they're a lot more, there's a good chance the reason is because there's a senior exemption. So you can notice that as being marked, because I promise you, unless you fall into that same category as the senior that owns that home, your property taxes are not going to be that, and they're going to go. They're definitely going to go up. So, Lloyd, what about some other tax reliefs out there? Can you go over those?
Well, we do. We have what we call open space. Say, for example, you have a 40-acre woodlot.
Okay.
And you could go under the timber exemption. And that would basically get you at a lower classification to reduce your tax burden on that piece of land. We also, one that, in fact, I just talked to a person today about remodels. And so if you're going to remodel your home, you should contact our office with your building permit and state precisely how much your remodel is. Say you're planning a $100,000 remodel. You can get 3 years of deferral on that value.
Wow. So
that's an important element, I think, especially now when people are taking another look at what they want to do with their property.
Well, now the equity is coming back up, and home equity line of credits are more accessible. People are thinking again about remodeling and doing improvements to their home.
Exactly. So, those are probably two of the most common that we have. We also have areas in dealing with historic property. Some folks may want to declare their property as historic, but there are elements there that you need to be careful if you get that type of an exemption, because you can't remodel, say, for example. It has to be strictly preserved in a historic aspect of it.
Makes sense.
But there are tax elements to it that would reduce your potential value because it is an historic property.
Sure. Now, we're not seeing a lot of rain yet, Lloyd, but I just have a feeling that it's going to be coming here soon. We're going to start seeing a little bit of rain, maybe a lot of rain. So there's risk of flooding and slight damage. And I know that your office is paying attention to everything that's going on as far as on the media and trying to keep up to date with that. But you might miss something that's going on out there, correct? Well, what do people do if there's a flood or they notice that, or a slide damage?
Well, for example, you are a homeowner, and we try to get to properties that, say, for example, we see on the media that had a major fire or a flood, etc., to get to that property to reevaluate the value. If, in fact, we miss you, please contact our office, because we want to make sure that your immediate situation is taken care of at a reduced value because of the disaster that occurred to you personally.
So, Lloyd, any suggestions or comments that you want to make for our listeners out there that have businesses? Well,
one of the things that we feel it's important is the personal property tax. Is a self-reporting system. On every April 30th, you must file with us an affidavit describing movable property to run your business. Say you're a restaurant, and it would be like the cook stoves, the refrigerators, anything else that is required to run your restaurant, tables, etc. And you should file that. And working with your accountant, they should have an asset listing, and you file that with us. And it's important that you do that, because I don't think anybody's interested in paying the penalty, which is 25% on the value. So you want to make sure you do it right the first time and notify our office.
Lloyd, thank you so much for coming in studio again. It's always a pleasure to have you here and sitting across from me face to face. And we'll look forward to having you back, I think, in another couple months, right?
That's correct. We look forward to always coming back.
Thank you,
Tina.
Lloyd.
It's great.
Coming up next on the Money Hour, strong sellers market. So do you really need to hire a real estate agent to list your home? The answer is yes, and you'll learn exactly why that could be a big mistake not doing that. John O'Brien with John L. Scott Real Estate right here on 570 KVI after this short break.
Interested in buying or selling a home in Seattle's active real estate market? John O'Brien with John L. Scott has helped hundreds of people achieve their real estate goals. John is committed to providing you with exceptional service by offering extensive market knowledge, aggressive marketing strategies, negotiating expertise, and honest advice to ensure a smooth transaction from start to finish. Experience plus integrity equals exceptional results.
This is John O'Brien with John L. Scott Real Estate. Feel free to contact me at 206-799-6957. That's 206-799-6957.
Here's amazing news from SolTerra Systems. Install solar in your home right now and save 50 to 90%. That's right. Incentives cover 50 to 90% of your cost. Here's Aimee Carpenter.
Go Solar in Washington State will pay you for all the energy you create, even if you use it in your own home. Get on the fast track to free energy with zero down financing. These incentives end soon, so call us today.
Call SolTerra Systems for a free site assessment. 800-865-9005 or useyourroof.com. That's useyourroof.com.
Isn't it time you start getting what you want? I'm Jason Watacha, owner of Noble Ridge Construction, specialist in custom home building and remodeling. It's time to make yourself happy and create the home that fits your desires and style. That process starts by visiting us at nobleridgeconstruction.com or follow us on Facebook to get inspired. You can also see featured custom lots available, architects, and Signature Series homes for sale by us. nobleridgeconstruction.com. That's nobleridgeconstruction.com. Dreams begin here.
This is the Money Hour with your host, Tina Mitchell, on Talk Radio 570 KVI. Now, back to the show with local mortgage and finance expert, Tina Mitchell.
Welcome back to the Money Hour with your host and mortgage expert, Tina Mitchell. I provide you news on everything money, fresh information on market trends and conditions right here in our local economy. And in studio now, my next guest, John O'Brien with John L. Scott Real Estate. The biggest thing that you'll ever sell is your home. So why would you try to cut cost on it? Can it really save you money at the end when you're thinking about not having representation on your home? Well, that's why I wanted to invite John in studio to share his expert advice on this subject. One of the top producing brokers at John L. Scott University Village branch, Seattle Magazine 5-star best in client satisfaction broker from 2008 till present, and over 10 years experience in real estate. John, thank you again for coming back in studio.
My pleasure, Tina. Nice to see you.
You too. And this is actually in all the shows that I've done, this is the first time that we've brought into studio for sale by owner, and or a short reference to it is a FSBO. And I think it's really important to talk about this, especially in this environment now, because there's so much activity going on for the sellers in their market. And so they may think, well, I don't really need to hire representation because I can just do it myself. There's so many massive buyers out there, right?
True. Yeah, it is definitely a seller's market. And there definitely are sellers out there who think they can go at it alone.
So are there any, other than the fact that there's so many sellers, is there any other, or so many buyers, are there any other things that you think that sellers are thinking about when they're thinking of selling for sale by owner?
Money is the primary reason folks try to sell their home themselves. They want to save some dough. a few sellers might have had a bad experience with a real estate agent in the past, so they're trying to go at it alone, but the primary reason is money. And interesting to note that I have some statistics from the National Association of Realtors, and this was a study done in 2012. FSBOs accounted for 9% of home sales in 2012, and the typical for sale by owner home actually sold for 19% less than agent-assisted home sales. So in the big picture, they're really not saving money.
Unbelievable. And if you take 19% of the average home price in our local market here, that is a whole heck of a lot of money to lose.
Absolutely. Yep.
So, John, let's talk about the MLS. The MLS, if you can tell our listeners, give a description of what that is, and can a for sale by owner, a seller selling without a real estate agent, be able to take advantage and have their property listed on that?
Yeah, so the MLS is the multiple listing service, and it's basically a clearinghouse for information. Agents use it every day to look at the homes that are available for sale, some past history about those homes. There's photos on the MLS, the tax information on the MLS. So it's a clearinghouse for information. And yes, for sale by owners can get on the MLS. They pay usually a flat fee to some service. And I can tell right away when a home is listed for sale by owner on the MLS because it usually doesn't have professional photos, so it stands out with the poor quality of photos. Many times they don't have all of the required information or all of the information that agents will provide to potential buyers and their agents in order to decide whether to see the property.
And I think that's actually really good that you said that, John. And two things that I picked up there is, photos. I mean, just think of yourself as a buyer and what you do. And when you're looking at photos, you're looking at homes, and the photos are everything. And if you don't like them, you're just discarding that property. And once it's discarded off of your list, it's not coming back up on there again. And so you've got to be really, really cautious of that. And then also, agents know, this is what you do for a living. You know the keywords to use. You know exactly how to market and put that home on the multiple listing service so that you're going to be more attractive to all these buyers. And I'm sorry, but you as a seller that is not a professional real estate agent doesn't have those techniques and know how to get that type of response, correct?
Absolutely. Yeah, the marketing is crucial, and you have to make that positive first impression. And frankly, a lot of FSBOs, they don't.
Yeah. So, John, let's talk about, for that seller that is thinking of selling their home without real estate agent representation, we have two agents involved in the transaction traditionally, one that represents the seller and one that represents the buyer. So the seller is deciding not to use an agent and sell for sale by owner. Well, we still have that other real estate agent that actually is the one that's going to be bringing all of these buyers to the seller. Is there any discrimination, or this other agent, do they really want to show that house? Is there risk that they're not going to show that house that doesn't have their own representation?
Some agents might not show the home just because they know that they're going to be getting, their side of the commission, but in effect they're going to be doing both sides of the transaction because it's happened to me. I've shown for sale by owners and I've gotten them under contract, and lo and behold, the seller starts calling me and asking me questions, and I'm representing the buyer.
Yes.
So I have no fiduciary to the seller at all. And yet, in order to get the transaction to close, I find myself doing tasks that a listing broker should be doing. Yeah.
And that's not any fun. It's too much work, but also it might not be an area that anybody even wants to get in the situation that they'd step in on the other side. So
Absolutely.
I think I never thought about that. I think it's such a huge point. And that's why I wanted to bring this topic to studio, because these are all things that you may not be thinking of, Mr. Seller that's out there that thinking of representing your house yourself and not hiring a real estate agent. So, John, I firmly believe, as you can tell, I'm sure if you're listening, you can tell I'm a believer of hiring an expert and not trying to do it on your own, and that it can be a really costly mistake. Where do you see most common that a seller is going to make a mistake that's going to cost them a lot of money?
The first mistake is pricing.
Okay.
Most sellers think their home is worth more than it really is. So sometimes as agents, we need to keep them in check and show them the comps and explain why they should price at a certain price point. Ultimately, it's the seller's decision. But FSBOs, the seller has no one kind of reeling them in, and so their pricing is definitely out of whack in many cases.
And which you mentioned, your statistics that you pulled right off of National Association of Realtors, that 9% represented in 2012 for sale by owners, and they sold for 19% less than the other homes that had representation.
Absolutely.
So there it is. I mean, there's the statistics and proof that that's a mistake that's being made. Now, also in this environment, especially because, I always want to talk about current things that are happening right now, there's a lot of multiple offers going on. So if you have a seller that does not have representation in selling that home, and these multiple offers do happen to come, what type of risk is there?
Well, they could, they could be leaving money on the table. Mm-hmm. They also could be opening themselves up to potential lawsuits if they're not using the proper forms, if they haven't done the proper disclosures on the property. Mm-hmm. And let's face it, real estate agents, we negotiate every single day. So as a seller, you're talking to a bunch of agents that know the real estate market, and they negotiate every single day. So it's going to be very difficult for you as a layman to negotiate the best price and terms for your property. Yeah, and there's all this creative stuff that are going on right now. I'd imagine a seller would look at that and not even really understand these creative things that are important, that they make sure the finance contingency, the pre-inspection, and all these things that are happening, the escalation clauses, all of that. So John, what about the inspection? Because if there isn't a pre-inspection, let's say that there is actually an inspection, and there's some negotiating around that as well. Yeah, so that's another situation that can get sticky, because sellers are very emotionally attached to their home. So when a buyer and their agent respond to an inspection with a list of repairs or remuneration in lieu of repairs, it's essentially like calling someone's baby ugly. They get emotional about it, and instead of having that detached broker to negotiate on their behalf, they have a tendency to get emotional, and a transaction can very easily fall apart during the inspection contingency. Got it. And John, another key thing, and you've already mentioned this today, but is the marketing, and there's also the showing of the property. So what risks are there? Who does that? Who takes care of all these showings? And if they don't have an agent. Right. So when an agent is representing a seller, we put an electronic key box on the property, and that records the date and time that each agent has shown the property. So if someone's for sale by owner and they don't have a lockbox on the property, they're basically opening the door to strangers and allowing them to walk through the home. And I would imagine if people out there trying to take advantage of a seller, they're going to choose the for sale by owners, because that is an easy target just for that reason. Absolutely. So we're not just talking about money here, John. We're talking about safety. Absolutely. And I always prep my sellers who go on the market, to hide valuables and prescription drugs. Yep. And we talk about what hours the home can be shown, what hours the home can't be shown. We talk about open houses and how we handle those. But a lot of for sale by owners, they're just basically opening the door for strangers. And we also, as agents, pre-approve buyers. So we know if a buyer is pre-approved and is a serious buyer. Yes. If you don't have representation, you're basically letting anyone in your home. They may have no inclination to buy a home. They might be casing it out, or just wanting to go into your home. So there's just three big things right there. Statistics show that you're going to actually sell for less money. 19% statistics show your safety and the safety of your family, and the legal issues that you could be dealing with. This is what it means when you go for sale by owner. So let's talk about the contract, John, because there's a specific purchase and sale residential contract. What does a for sale by owner do there? Good question. Most of them rely on a licensed agent to bring an offer, which is printed on MLS forms. But if it's just a public party, they're going to have to find forms on the internet or do some creative writing themselves. And we have some really specific things right here in our area that is not everywhere. Yeah, absolutely. And our forms have been, looked over and approved by teams of lawyers from every brokerage and from the MLS. So we know those forms are good. And as agents, we try to do as little creative writing as possible, because it's much easier to use the pre-printed forms. So, John, just a really quick breakdown of the cost to sell. Yeah, the cost to sell is usually 8 to 8.5%.
Okay.
And in a standard transaction, 6% is going to real estate fees. So 3% to the listing office, 3% to the selling office.
Okay, so I want to stop there really quickly. If you're listening, you're not going to save the 3% of the agent that's going to bring you a buyer. You're only saving the 3% of the agent that is representing. So if you think you're going to save the entire 8.5%, you're not. If you think you're going to save the 6%, chances you're not unless you just go find your own buyer. Okay, go ahead, John.
Yep. And then there's 1.78% excise tax. That's city and county. You're going to pay that either way. And then there's 0.25% to 0.5% that's going to go to title and escrow fees.
And which you're going to have to pay regardless.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what advice would you give a seller that is considering with an agent or is considering not using an agent and doing for sale by owner? I think we've covered it, but what's your biggest advice?
My biggest advice is be practical.
Don't do it.
Don't do it, yes. But if you are going to give it a go, be smart and price your home right. Have a professional photographer take photos and be very, very careful. Don't let strangers into your house at all hours just because you want to sell your home. You know, your family's safety comes first.
And great advice, John. And I just want to do a quick wrap up on the financing. I can't say enough, and John has mentioned it as well, that financing is a big issue. Lending is not like it used to be. You can't just breathe on a mirror and get a loan. There's a lot that gets to a financing, and that's the worst mistake you can make is get your home off the market, sell it to somebody that's not financeable. And if you've got a real estate agent representing you, there's a good chance they're going to make sure that doesn't happen. John, thank you so much for coming back in studio again. It's a pleasure to have you here and look forward to having you come back.
Sounds good. Thanks, Tina.
Coming up next in the Money Hour, understanding why solar energy use is so important and can help you develop a solar energy plan that saves you a whole heck of a lot of money. That's why I have our next guest, Aimee Carpenter with SolTerra Systems, right here on 570 KVI after this short break.
Here's amazing news from SolTerra Systems. Install solar in your home right now and save 50 to 90%. That's right. Incentives cover 50 to 90% of your cost. Here's Aimee Carpenter.
Go Solar in Washington State will pay you for all the energy you create, even if you use it in your own home. Get on the fast track to free energy with zero down financing. These incentives end soon, so call us today.
Call SolTerra Systems for a free site assessment. 800-865-9005 or useyourroof.com. That's useyourroof.com.
Isn't it time you start getting what you want? I'm Jason Watacha, owner of Noble Ridge Construction, specialist in custom home building and remodeling. It's time to make yourself happy and create the home that fits your desires and style. That process starts by visiting us at nobleridgeconstruction.com or follow us on Facebook to get inspired. You can also see featured custom lots available, architects, and Signature Series homes for sale by us. nobleridgeconstruction.com. That's nobleridgeconstruction.com. Dreams begin here.
This is the Money Hour with your host, Tina Mitchell, on Talk Radio 570 KBI. Now, back to the show with local mortgage and finance expert, Tina Mitchell.
Well, welcome back to the Money Hour with your host and mortgage expert, Tina Mitchell. I'm dedicated to my listeners, providing you with the tools needed to make informed decisions on everything that might affect your money. And now in studio, regular contributor of my show, Aimee Carpenter with SolTerra Systems. Why are there so many people excited about installing solar panels on their home? What's the big deal? It's because it's all about saving money, and you can save a lot of money. And so that's why I just love it when Aimee comes in, because it's really the core of the show is money and how do we maximize and minimize the expenses that we're paying out. So Aimee, thank you again for being here.
Thank you. It's always fun to be here.
Aimee is a solar design consultant and marketing director of SolTerra Systems. She's been helping homeowners and businesses in the Northwest become more energy efficient, energy independent and efficient for the last 5 years. SolTerra Systems is an electrical and roofing company. They specialize in innovative rooftops and have been active in the Northwest since 2008 and have grown 100% a year and have won numerous awards. So Aimee, again, thank you for being here. And let's start out. I mentioned earlier in the show that the rain's going to be coming. Right?
Yep.
Maybe we're not going to have a lot because our summer was just so awesome. We'll just have to wait and see. But how does that really affect the functionality of solar, and is Washington really the right place?
That's a great question. Probably the most common question I get asked is, does solar really work here? How is that possible? We're in kind of a gray corner. Mm-hmm. The reality is we actually get a lot more sun than we get credit for. When you look at 30 years of historical weather data, we get about 70% the annual sunlight of Los Angeles every single year. Of course, a lot of that's concentrated in the summer, but actually even going into the darkest part of our winter, we still produce solar energy every single day. When it's overcast, we're still getting UV rays through those clouds, and that's what it takes to generate that power. So even on the darkest day, you're still going to see about 10% of the production you would see on a clear sunny day.
Yeah, awesome. And, you generate a lot of calls when you come into studio, Aimee, and that's why I keep inviting you back, is because I like to listen to what our listeners like to hear and what triggers them to pick up the phone and call. And you've helped a lot of listeners in talking about solar and the benefit to them. So now that we're getting into these winter months, is this the right time? Should someone still pick up the phone and call now, or should they just hang out and wait till the sun comes back?
They should definitely call now, first and foremost, just to get the information. Knowledge is power. Mm-hmm. And it's something where if you've been thinking about it, it's worth picking up the phone. It's a 5 to 10 minute phone call. I can actually pull up a roof line on Google Earth. Satellite imagery is very convenient for what I do. And oftentimes after that call, either, that person will know, wow, I'm really excited about this. I had no idea it was so beneficial. Or it might not be the right time, or I might not have the right roof for it. Mm-hmm. But if you don't pick up the phone, you're never going to know. So I love talking with people every show. Like you said, I get the calls, and it's great. It's great to reach more people. Solar is an educational process above all else. And
it is. And that's just like mortgages. I mean, it's all about educating. And when you look at the numbers, they make sense or they don't. And there's a huge savings, or not as much. But if you don't have that number, it's 1-888-987-0570. Again, it's 1-888-987-0570. And what Aimee does for our listeners, I mean, the consultation process and the report that she generates, and I speak for myself because she's done one for myself and my husband at our home. It's amazing, and it's really bullet point and easy to see the benefits and what makes most sense. Any other tips that you have on that report, or what somebody would be seeing on that?
It's basically just going to break down in a super simple format, what's the overall cost versus benefit breakdown for my home by going solar. Okay. There's tons of incentives right now. And often people are also curious, how much can I actually generate on my roof? Can I cover 20, 30, 40% of my home's usage? 20 to 40% is the average, but sometimes it's really exciting if someone can do more than 50%. All of that info is in one spot. And so it's a really nice snapshot of what's feasible and what's possible to do.
And I like how you break it down with those incentives. So let's talk about that, because there's a lot of things that are going on, and there are different, just like for me for an example, there's different loan programs. And so laying them all out, something jumps out and exactly that's the right program for you. And there's different things as far as these incentives as well. Can you talk about some of those, Aimee?
Definitely. So there's federal and state incentives, and depending on where you live in Washington State, sometimes even a local incentive for solar. The federal incentive is a big one. It's 30% of the total installation that you do. So you get a 30% tax credit. And that is a credit, not a deduction, which those terms sometimes get
dollar for dollar, not a
interchangeably and incorrectly as well. So it's huge. I mean, basically a third of your system will be covered in the first year at the federal level. And then the other thing on the state level, there's two incentives. The first one is a sales tax exemption. We're really excited that actually got extended this year. It was set to expire in June of 2013, and it was extended for 5 years. So our state's committed to renewable energy, committed to making these incentives more accessible to more people. So we were very excited about that. And then the other incentive in Washington is the one that I find people are most surprised by. And this one is called a production incentive. Okay. The state will actually physically write you a check once per year for all of the electricity that you generate on your roof. Even if you use that power yourself, you never sell it back to the grid, they're still going to pay you for that.
Wow.
and that goes through June of 2020. So that's the other reason you asked me earlier, well, shouldn't I just wait till next year? The reality is no, every day that you have systems installed, you're accumulating this incentive. And the state is paying 15 cents per kilowatt hour as a base, which is 1.5 times the going rate of power. And if you support locally made products, we have 2 manufacturers in Washington. They up that incentive to 54 cents per kilowatt hour. So that's 5.5 times the going rate of power. And on top of that, you don't purchase that power from the grid. So not only are you getting a check from the state once a year just for going solar, but you're also reducing your energy costs on a month-to-month basis.
We got a double dip here.
You do.
Double dipping. So again, pick up the phone, give Aimee a call right here on our show, 1-888-987-0570. You heard it from her, 10 minutes. She can generate a report, let you know exactly what type of money that you'd be saving and kind of analyze it. And it's fun to get her out in the house too, because sometimes she'll do that. She'll come out to your house, she'll crawl up on the roof, and she's a little tiny gal, so but she does a lot of roof clawing. Aimee, let's talk about, because I'd asked this question to you off air before, and the answer was kind of surprising to me. So I wanted to share it with my listeners. Leasing, because there's some leasing opportunities, but give your advice on that and how that works.
Sure. So solar leasing is something, if you just do a quick Google search for solar, it's going to come up. It's attractive to a lot of people at first glance, because in some ways you're getting a system put on your roof, you're leasing it from some third-party investor, and you're just committing to some sort of low monthly payment to reduce your overall energy costs. Well, first of all, leasing isn't even allowed in Washington, so it's not an option right now. But the other thing, it's kind of like leasing a car. You know, if you're only going to be in your home for a couple years, but you really like the idea of solar, it could make sense. But beyond that leasing company, that third-party investor, they're taking all of the incentives that you get for solar and keeping them themselves. And that's kind of where the misinformation comes in. If you own that system, you're getting anywhere from 50 to 80% of your investment back in incentives. And then you also own it outright, which means you've got 25 to 30 years of free power coming off of your roof. So owning a system, in my mind, makes much more sense if you plan on being in the home for at least 3 to 5 years. And then when you do go to sell the home eventually, whether that's 5 years down the road, or I have some clients tell me they're never leaving their house, they're leaving on a horizontal plane.
Yep, sure.
So in that, either way, you know, the increased value on the home is also there. When you put solar on your roof, you reduce the cost to operate that home.
Yeah.
So when you're comparing similar sized homes or homes with similar properties to them, the home with solar will cost less per month to operate. And so that might allow someone to afford a slightly larger home than they wanted, or just make your home that much more attractive.
So, Aimee, when they get this report and they see the upfront fee for having solar, not to worry, because there's some options as far as financing. I can't provide it because I do mortgage financing, but there are options. Can you talk about that for my listeners?
Definitely. So that's actually normally something I talk about as part of the incentives. Solar is a large upfront investment. It's not something that most people do without financing help. And in the last 2 years, we've had a great local loan program become available. It's a local credit union that will offer financing for solar for $0 down. It's a fixed rate loan amortized over 15 years, which means you are committing to a fairly low monthly payment. But there's no prepayment.
Low monthly, give an example.
Somewhere between $100 and $250 a month is the average. And it's at 4.49% to 4.99% fixed rate for 15 years. Just to put solar on your roof. It's not linked to the home directly. It's a UCC filing on the fixture, the solar fixture on the roof. So it's a great option. As those incentives come in, you can put those back on the principal of the loan. And as long as you're making your minimum payment, the loan is typically paid off in less than 5 years. Wow. Every situation is different. So, you know, no one should hold me to that exactly, but I can help people do that research themselves and really see how quickly they can own that system. Okay.
Aimee, any other myths out there that you want to share with my listeners?
I think the other common misconception that I hear is, you know, that there's only a few types of roofs that work well for solar. South facing, of course, is going to be the best because of where our sun spends most of the time. But the reality is solar works great on west facing roof lines, on east facing roof lines. It's not as sensitive to the orientation or the angle as a lot of people think. So anything between a 10 degree and a 45 degree roof is actually going to be a good candidate for solar.
Okay.
Same thing with east and west facing. Those can also be great candidates. And then I think the other misconception that we've already kind of touched on is just that it's so expensive that it's never worth doing.
Yep.
And that is incorrect in a lot of cases. So I think, again, if someone's curious, why not look into it? The worst thing that you'll find out is that maybe it's not a good fit for you, but more likely you'll probably be surprised at how well it could work.
Yeah. Now, Aimee, what about condition of the roof? Is that something to consider in making that final decision?
Definitely. So condition of the roof is something that we get asked about a lot. First of all, we are a licensed roofing contractor, so we can help people with new roofing solutions if they need it. But really what we're looking for is 5 to 10 years of roof life remaining on that roof. If they have 5 years, it's actually a great option to go solar because the amount of incentives that would be missed out on in 5 years is much greater than the cost to remove and reinstall panels. The reality is solar is a very easy installation. It's a very technical install. There's a lot of design that goes into it, but taking a system down and reinstalling it is only half a day to a day of labor.
Which doesn't seem like it. It seems like that would be a big undertaking, but it's really not.
It's really not. And we've been doing this a long time. So our team is able to do most rooftop installs in 2 days. So it's a simple piece. You do have to budget it into your future roofing project, but it's not that large of a percentage.
So, Aimee, how much solar do I need for a 2,000 square foot home?
Great question. So it's actually not based on the square footage of the home in most cases. If you have
I knew the answer. I just wanted my listeners to know the answer.
And I get asked that a lot too. What's the cost per square foot? How much solar do I need per square foot? It doesn't work that way. It's based on how much energy you use. And you can have a very small home that uses more power and electricity than a very large home. It kind of is based on the family that lives there. So the easiest way for me to assess that is to look at someone's electric bill and look at how many kilowatt hours of electricity are actually being used. The average home, we offset somewhere between 20 and 40% of their electric usage. You're still tied to the grid with a solar install, which is actually great because then you never experience any difference in living in the home. There's no flickering lights. There's no, risk of not being able to use multiple appliances. But then the grid's also there. If you're producing more power than you get to use that as your storage. You run your meter backwards physically, which is a pretty cool thing to see, knowing the power company's paying you. And then you have a credit to use later.
Awesome. Aimee, again, thank you for coming into studio. If you're listening, pick up the phone right now, 1-888-987-0570, or at least write that number down. Give the show a call later. We'll definitely connect you with any of our guests in studio today. And Aimee, always pleasure to have you here.
Thanks again. Appreciate it.
And this is your host. And don't forget your mortgage expert as well. Signing off for today's show. Thank you so much for being here. I promise I'm going to be back next Sunday, same time, 11 a.m. Tune in and we'll have more awesome guests in studio, and you guys have a great rest of your weekend. Thank you.
Isn't it time you start getting what you want? I'm Jason Watacha, owner of Noble Ridge Construction, specialist in custom home building and remodeling. It's time to make yourself happy and create the home that fits your desires and style. That process starts by visiting us at nobleridgeconstruction.com or follow us on Facebook to get inspired. You can also see featured custom lots available, architects, and signature series homes for sale by us. nobleridgeconstruction.com. That's nobleridgeconstruction.com. Dreams begin here.
The preceding program was paid for by Absolute Mortgage, a division of Pinnacle Capital Mortgage Corporation. Absolute Mortgage Company, NMLS number 81395 and Washington CL number 81395 is an equal opportunity housing lender. Tina Mitchell, MLO number 145420, is a licensed loan originator with Absolute Mortgage. Visit absoluteloans.com or call 888-90-HOMES for cost information.